Oh, thank you for that. Right, we're
Well, I
going
don't
live.
know.
We're going live now
Let me
anyway.
get my O2 off so I don't look like an old man.
Oh, okay. Right, hello everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere. Well, we've got Christopher O'Brien on again. I think he was on about quite a few months ago. We discussed a different area of his book, in the one of the Mystery Valley,
The San
uh,
Luis Valley in Colorado.
yeah, in Colorado, and quite a few different books. But today we're gonna do a bit involvement with the Skinwalker Ranch. I know it's a very difficult and delicate thing to talk about the Skinwalker in some areas because sometimes they shut you down. You stop your podcast halfway through. It's happened before, but we'll see how far we go today. Can we please welcome Christopher to the show? Hello there.
Peace.
Peace.
Simsalabim.
When we talk about Skinwalker, how did you come to be involved with it in them early days?
Phone call. I was, I remember it pretty distinctly. I was doing some work outside, living in Colorado, having been involved in my own research and uh, investigation work in Colorado. My book had just come out, and literally, and I got a call from my good friend David Perkins, who unfortunately passed away this past August. He was my best friend, mentor, incredibly gifted writer. Had a master's in political science from Yale University. He was extremely bright, very, very smart. And he called me up and said, "Hey, this friend of mine who's a writer for the Deseret News up in Utah had just read your book, and he's getting ready to release an article exposing this ranch in Fort Duchesne, Utah. And he's wondering if he can call you and bounce some things off you, and see if kind of see what you have to say about it." And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." Always intrigued about interesting cases. At the time, I was only dealing with a single mountain valley, the largest high mountain valley in the world, as it turns out. But I wasn't going outside of the valley to do any investigations. So
Yeah.
this particular town was 450 miles from me. So I figured, hey, I'll give the writer, I'll give him some insight or whatever I can provide. And so Zach Van Eck, the writer of the original Deseret uh, article exposing the Sherman Ranch with Gwen and Terry Sherman and their two kids. Um, he called me up and he said, "Look, I'm coming out with this article. Uh, this rancher is really freaked out. He is could really use somebody to talk to that is have some experience and some of the things that he's dealing with up here." And I said, "Well, like what?" He said, "Well, he says he's had a number of cattle mutilations. He's had like strange creatures that they've seen, some more fantastical than others. They've had what he feels are some sort of abduction type experiences. In one, they woke up and their bed had blood all over their bed, and they had these scoop marks taken out of them that had bled pretty profusely without them waking up. And he said there's strange poltergeist type stuff. The Gwen would bring in the groceries and set all the grocery bags on the kitchen table, and she'd go out to answer the phone, or something would draw her outside of the kitchen for just seconds, or maybe a few minutes. She'd walk back in, and all the groceries that she had put into the cabinets were all back on the table in the bags. And she said furniture moving around, just weirdness. So I said, well, I'm not really sure what I what I can do to help, but I'm she's almost 500 miles away, but I'd be more than happy to talk to the guy. So he supplied me with the ranch's phone number, and I gave him a call and introduced myself. And for the next hour, he blew me away with some of the accounts that some of which appeared in the article that came out. I think the next day. It was like boom, boom. I had the call. Article came out, and then of course when the now infamous book Hunt for the Skinwalker came out about 10 years later, many of the same initial stories that Terry had told me over the phone were in the book. Meant a good amount of them were wrong in terms of when they happened. Some of the details were skewed in the book compared to my notes that I had taken when I was on the phone with Terry. Robert Bigelow, the famous financier and billionaire who made his fortune in the budget suites hotel chain here in the United States, he when he read the article, he went up with Colonel John Alexander and bought the place on the spot. He flew up in his private jet, went to the ranch, and bought it. The one thing Terry had insisted in my initial phone call with him, which again is July 1996, is that he wanted to get off the ranch. He was scared and in fear for the safety of his family. He had very expensive breeding cattle that weren't your standard $400 or $500 heifers. They were, $10,000 an animal livestock, and you lose a few of those, and you're taking a big financial hit. So he needed to get off of there, but he wanted to find somebody that could the place because he felt that there was something going on here that scientifically was important. And did I know anybody that would be interested in buying the ranch? And I mentioned Robert Bigelow's name. I also mentioned Lawrence Rockefeller, who at the time was funding Linda Moulton Howe, which many of your listeners are probably viewers would know. Funding John Mack, the Pulitzer Prize winning psychologist, the head of the psychology department at Harvard, who was working at the time with Bud Hopkins on abduction cases. Stephen Greer, who he funded and then jerked the funding very quickly when he found out what a piece of work he was. And then, of course, someone familiar with most of your listeners or viewers would be Colin Andrews, the famous crop circle researcher. So I figured that Rockefeller would be a perfect fit, that he could get a team of scientists up there to study the place. And before I could supply Terry with the phone numbers and contact information of these two individuals, Bigelow, on his own, heard about the ranch or read the article and went up there and bought it. So, just boom, locked it up. And of course, as we all know, in about 2006, $22 million was allocated in the U.S. Congress at the behest of one of the senators from Nevada, Harry Reid, and Senator from Hawaii, Daniel Inouye, and the senator from Alaska got together and were able to allocate $22 million that they created OSAP, which is now the infamous organization that has been revealed. And along with the National Institute of Discovery Sciences, which was Robert Bigelow's sort of paranormal scientific research organization, along with the microbiologist and managing director of NIDS, Colm Kelleher. The team was assembled and they went up there. And as a result of some of the work that was done there, scientific papers were actually created and sent along as the end of OSAP transitioned into OTEP, which was the aerial threat version of OSAP. OSAP was just kind of a big net that they dragged up paranormal stuff, crypto creatures, strange poltergeist stuff, cattle mutilations. They were studying all that under OSAP, and then ATIP, which spun off of OSAP when the money ran out, was and then ATIP was ran by Lou Elizondo, who is coming out with a book here in a couple of weeks that everybody's waiting for, called Intrigue, I think. Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, which was exclusively studying potential aerial threat capabilities of the strange aerial objects that are seen all over the world. So anyway, in a nutshell, yeah, I was involved initially in 1996. The day after I got the call from Terry, or made the call rather to Terry, he had invited me up to see the place, and I went up there. I drove with my brother and a friend of ours, and my brother's dog, Cato, and we drove all the way up to Utah. It was 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh.
One of the hottest days of the year up there. It was really blisteringly hot. And I sat with Terry for a couple hours and walked around the ranch, parts of the ranch with him, and saw some of the the punch marks in the hard pan, the real super hard desert soil had these punch marks into it that were arrayed in 40-foot sections between three like landing marks, a tripod configuration, 40 feet on a side, and these 14-inch like punches into the ground, like a giant hole punch into the ground, which is quite, you get a big burly guy would barely make a footprint, and these things are punched 9 to 14 inches into the ground. It was estimated that he had a friend that brought over an expert who worked in the oil fields that are around the southern and western part of the ranch area there. In the lower Uinta Basin, there's a lot of oil and gas drilling going on, and before they can bring in some of the heavy equipment, they have these experts that come in and determine how much weight the ground can sustain. And the expert was brought in, and he said it took about 9 tons of pressure, 18,000 pounds minimum, to punch those marks into Terry's pasture. And there were a number of them. I think I saw 3 different arrays. If I remember, I'd have to check my notes. He told me also, he told me the stories that we all know now from the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, and from the original Deseret News article that came out. And also my friend David Perkins was the last person to interview Terry before he was, signed a non-disclosure agreement with Bigelow, and then didn't talk to anybody else ever after that. That didn't happen for about a month. So all through August of 96, I had to have been on the phone with him at least 10 times, a dozen times, a couple times right when things were going on the ranch. And he would be giving me a blow-by-blow description of what was happening, including the event where the blue orb flew around, checked out his horse, checked out his wife. This was at night. Flew by the ranch house, in the barn, all the lights dimmed, and then flew out. It was a softball-sized blue orb, and it flew out into the dark, into the line of trees they had there, and the dogs, his 3 dogs, went chasing off, barking after it. And now Terry's on the phone with me, giving a blow-by-blow
Yeah.
description of what's going on. I can hear the horses freaking out. I hear his wife freaking out. I hear the dogs barking.
Oh God.
And that happened on August 6, 1996. In the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, they have the event as in April 95. So having written down the date and time of the event and being on the phone with the guy, I can assure your watchers and listeners that Hunt for the Skinwalker is not completely accurate. There's some discrepancies in there based on my discrepancies, at least around the time period I was in direct touch with the rancher. So
Why?
getting back, go ahead. I'm monopolizing the conversation here.
No, Chris. Why do you think it's a hotbed of activity then?
I have no idea. It doesn't have anything to do with skinwalkers, I can tell you that.
Exactly, yeah, because call it Skinwalker Ranch now, don't they?
This whole skinwalker thing is just taking on a life of its own. First of all, it's on the Ute Indian reservation, and they don't have the tradition of skinwalkers. Now, the story goes that the Ute supplied the scouts for, who was it that Kit Carson and I think it was Sherman that subjugated the Navajo, which lived down in Arizona and New Mexico. And the Utes were up, hundreds of miles away up in Utah. And the story goes that the Navajo were pissed at the Utes for helping out the U.S. cavalry and subjugating the Navajo people. And so they put a curse on the ranch, and it's the place of the Skinwalker and all this bull crap. I've never seen any research that backs that up. And if you talk to any, Uinta Mountain Ute, they laugh and say, well, it's a catchy name.
Yes, definitely.
It really doesn't have anything to do with the taboo area just south of Fort Duchesne there. Now, based on my research, and I've done quite a bit of it, the Utes have a tradition that nobody is allowed to go in this particular part of the Uinta Basin because it's number one, there's a sacred burial ground there that's on the ridge overlooking the ranch, and the area does have a tradition of having spooky stuff go on. And so officially they won't comment on it, but unofficially the residents there say that for generations they've been told not to go there. And of course, if the Indians aren't going to go there, then why not sell it to the white guys?
Exactly.
How the ranch became settled in the early parts of the 20th century. And then eventually by the Myers family, who sold it to Terry Sherman. But that was basically the idea is, since we can't go there, let's make some money off it and sell to the white guys. Now, when Myers moved out, even though they said nothing ever happened there, they went on the record and they pretty much poo-pooed the whole spookiness on the ranch. Or, well, we never saw anything. It's not true. They did see things. They just didn't want to get slimed by it. And when they moved out, when any building on our Indian reservations is abandoned, every bit of copper, any fixtures, any appliances, all that stuff's ripped right out of that place immediately. They'll go in and scavenge and anything that's salvageable that you can make money off of. The natives have a habit of going in and stripping places clean. Well, according to Terry Sherman, when they moved in, it looked like the people who lived there had left and nothing had been touched for 7 years, which was the time period, according to Terry, that was between the last person to live there and when Terry and his family moved in.
Right.
He said coats were on coat hangers, dishes were in the sink, food was rotted in the fridge. He said it looked like somebody had just up and left, and there was a 7-year layer of dust over everything. And he said he couldn't believe that a building like that would be left on an Indian reservation and have it be untouched. So that was his first indication that maybe something was a
What's
little,
going on?
yeah, was going on and a little screwy in the place. So there's a really good article that you should read, folks. It's called "The Ranch from Hell," written by David Perkins. It's the last official interview that Terry Sherman did,
Right.
literally a day or two before he signed a non-disclosure agreement. And in it, he gives a blow-by-blow description of what it was like to move in on that ranch. And that's where you have the description of everything being left the way it was left by the prior owners 7 years before he moved in. So this is 96. Now, obviously, having traveled to the first case that has taken me outside of the San Luis Valley, initially, I was really excited about it. And I thought, wow, this is going to be a really good case for me.
Mm.
And I was, on the phone with Terry almost daily, talking to him, referring him to experts about various aspects of some of the phenomena that were going on. And, I thought it was the beginning of a very, very fruitful relationship. And when I go out and do a investigation, the very first time I meet the individual, I never ask questions. I shut up and let the person talk.
Yeah, listen.
Let them feel comfortable with me and get them into a place where they can open up and feel confident and feel safe about confiding in me. I'll even go as far as to sit there and talk about anything but the reason why I'm there. And occasionally, if I think the person's going to be a tough nut to crack, as they say, I'll never bring anything up, and I'll just let them bring it up. And if they don't, I'll leave.
Right.
And then I'll give them a call a couple of weeks later. Hey, this is Chris, or send them a note. Usually I would send little notes.
How did you feel when you got there then yourself?
It felt like it's just a normal ranch to me. I felt absolutely nothing. And I'm actually
Tuned in.
well, I am. Later on, I think I got more of an ability to identify things that physiologically resonate within me or impact me on that intuitive side and stuff. And at this point, I'd only been really doing investigations for about 3 or 4 years. I don't think I wasn't really tuned into that aspect of it. Of course, on the way back, I gobbled some psilocybin mushrooms. And that's when I got my first inkling that maybe there was something going on in that area of the world, which I've since found out is one of the spookier places in North America, without question. I've done many years of research and made quite a number of trips up to that area in the intervening years. Well, it's almost 30 years now since I went up to the Sherman Ranch, 28 years. So I was in touch with Terry all throughout August. I told him about David Perkins, how he was a great writer and that he should talk to him. That's when David, at the end of my my month, the 5-week period that I had with Terry, that's when David did the interview, which is again the last interview, The Ranch from Hell. Google it. It's on the Wayback Machine. It's on the Utah UFO Hunters website. I think it's still up. You can find it online. It's been it's been regurgitated quite a number of times. It's located in a few places. So I would really highly recommend that. As far as feeling anything, no, it was a little creepy when he told me about the portals opening up in the air like a giant camera aperture and these 40-foot triangles, which he thought were the ones that were landing in the field and making the marks. They would kind of wobble through. They kind of fly out of the. Well, they would. He said that they would kind of shakily fly in real slow into
Right.
our reality, and then the aperture would close, and sometimes they would shoot off without just boom. They'd be gone. They'd fire up and go somewhere. Or they would hover and send out these little refrigerator-sized glowing objects, which, with his description, reminds me of the refrigerator-sized glowing chupas that were seen around Colares, the island of Colares, in the mouth of the Amazon River in 78, 79, and 80, which is the famous Colares case where these glowing refrigerator-sized objects would go hunting for hunters in the woods who'd be up in trees, and they would zap them with some sort of particle beam.
Oh yeah.
And quite a number of people were actually killed by these things, which Jacques Vallée investigated, and also Bob, who was the guy that wrote the book, Bob Pratt, wrote a book on the Colares case. He was the chief UFO investigator for the National Enquirer, who all during the late 60s through the 70s into the 80s was one of the only places you could get cutting edge UFO information from around the world. That was one of the few things that you could actually take seriously when you were reading the Enquirer. Of course, there'd be a picture of Jackie Onassis marrying an alien on the cover, and just outlandish stuff. But Bob Pratt did a good job. He covered the Dulce mutilations. He covered a number of. I think he was involved in the Delphos case in Kansas with the glowing ring left behind. So Bob Pratt wrote the book on Colares, and the objects again that we're seeing going hunting for people in the woods. That's the same exact description that Terry was giving me about these objects that were coming out of the triangles. And I said, well, when was the last time you saw one of these things? And he says, just a couple of weeks ago. He said, it opened up right here out in front of my ranch house. And the thing, he said, it must have been a rookie driver, because usually they come in slow through the aperture or the portal. And but this guy, he said, came through really fast, and it was about 60 feet. The portal was 60 feet up in the air, and you can see where he broke the tops of my cottonwood trees. And he points over to the trees, and sure enough, there are all these branches on the ground that had, obviously had been alive when they were broken. They, the leaves had all turned brown. It was in the cottonwood flourishes, in July and August, and there's beautiful leaves. They're a drought-resistant tree. And so we checked it out, and sure enough, the branches were there, and they'd been broken off with blunt force trauma. They weren't sawed. You could tell when something snapped off as opposed to, cut.
Yeah.
And who's going to go 60 foot up in a grove of cottonwood and break? How are you going to break off the branches? So
exactly
that when I saw that, then I kind of got a little creeped out by that, because to me, someone who used to harvest standing deadwood in the forest and haul big trailer loads of logs back for construction projects, which was was my job during the day, how I paid my bills. I would go up into the mountains and and cut down standing deadwood. I know how difficult it is. Number one, cottonwood is super spongy, and it's really difficult to break because it just bends. So to see the snapped off cottonwood branches, it was impressive to me.
I can
And it
imagine.
also bolstered, to me, it gave legitimacy, and it impressed me in terms of the overall story that I was hearing. If this was true, why would he be talking about the other stuff that, if and making that up? So to me, it confirmed in my mind that I hadn't made a wasted trip of 450 something miles.
Exactly.
Up there.
I know Sober's in the chat room. He's just said, has Chris ever been warned off by the Men in Black or similar? Do you
Warned off by what?
Work in your investigation work? Have you ever been warned off by the Men in Black or somebody similar?
Only two times. One time was when I was investigating underground base, underground facilities along the Colorado-New Mexico border, when I was approached by a militia group member who was in fear of his life, was getting ready to leave, but he wanted to spill his guts and divulge what he knew about his militia group monitoring the entrance of an underground military facility. I attracted the attention of human elements. They came into my house. They didn't think I was home. They didn't think anybody was home. They stole case incident reports from the Great Sand Dunes National Park. I had been given UFO reports that had been filed by the rangers there, and those were gone. 24 photographs were taken. My most important map, which is my composite map with all my sightings and everything on it, with colored dots for the type of event it was, that was taken off my wall and stolen. They rifled through my files. They probably got other stuff that I just couldn't find later on. I mean, there were some few things that they got, and I could hear them right through the wall. My bedroom was right next to my office, and I could hear them going through, and they were talking full voice. They weren't whispering or anything. And my girlfriend's daughter, Brisa, at the time was about 9, I think, and she was upstairs in her bedroom, and one of them went upstairs, and for some reason she had gone to the top bunk of the bunk beds that she had up there. And normally she would sleep in the bottom bunk, but for some reason that night she decided to sleep in the top bunk. I think because the moon was coming in and was shining on her and keeping her up. So she went to the top bunk. Well, she heard the guys come in, and she hid under the covers. And when the guy came up, she peeked out from the covers and said he had something sticking out off from the front of his head. So evidently he was wearing some sort of night vision goggles or something. I think that it sounded there were either 3 or 4 of these guys. And at one point, when I heard my computer turn on, and you hear that, that sound, meaning that you're booting up, I said, "Honey, is that you? What are you doing home?" And they were gone. They were out of there instantly. And that freaked me out. This was 98, so it would have been 2 years later after I'd been doing the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. But in 2002, I got a call from David Perkins, who had gotten a call from Zach Van Eck, the original author of the Desiree news story, who called me and asked me to talk to Terry. Zach had called David and asked him if he had heard about deaths on the Sherman Ranch. Wasn't being called Skinwalker Ranch up until the book came out.
Right, yeah.
Which was 2006, I think. And Zach said, I got a call from this physicist named Jack Sarfati, who's a very famous physicist that has worked for the DARPA and the DIA and CIA. He's been involved in all these spooky organizations. As you know, he's like him and Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis. They all are these spooky guys that are interested in paranormal type stuff and dark energy and sophisticated propulsion, anti-gravity. Anyway, that the story was that Jack Sarfati was over in England. He was visiting Uri Geller actually, and they went to lunch at some it's one of the clubs that all the MI5 guys hang out in. And I forget he told me the name of the street, and I got it written down somewhere. And it was some club there. You'd probably know it if you heard it. And
Yeah.
there was a fairly large group of people, about a dozen people that were around a conference table. He took photographs. I've got them. And there was a woman there that had a bodyguard. There was a big bald guy that was very imposing looking, and he had this Samsonite sort of big briefcase. And the woman was French. She spoke with a fairly heavy French accent. And at one point, Nick Cook, the guy that used to be the one of the chief journalists and writers for Jane's Defense Weekly, he was there. Uri Geller was there. There was a number of notable people that were in the room.
Yeah.
And Sarfati said this French woman, somebody brought up, this was 2002, and somebody brought up the Sherman Ranch, and she said, "Oh, is that the place where the guards were killed?" And I think everyone was kind of surprised by that because nobody had heard about that, and said, "Oh yeah, one of these, portals opened up right next to these guys, and they freaked out and started shooting, and they got killed."
Oh.
And Sarfati was just slack-jawed. He was, and so he called Zach Van Eck and asked him if he knew about any guards, Bigelow's people getting killed or injured on the ranch. And Zach said, "No, but I'll make some phone calls and see if I can find out." And Sarfati never told him not to tell anybody. In fact, Zach said, "No, let me look into this for you." Right. And so the first person he called was David Perkins, who was the last guy to talk to Terry Sherman. And of course, David knew that I had been up there and that I had been doing quite a bit of research into the area and interviewing some of the Indians and some of the locals and some of the oil workers and gas workers and stuff. And so he called me, and I said, "No, I had not heard about this. So let me start digging into this." And so the first place I went online was my community bulletin board of investigators. It was a private, this is back in 2002, before chat,
Oh yeah,
really just at the beginning of chat rooms and stuff. And it was called June. And so I posted on June, "Has anybody heard about deaths or injuries on the Sherman Ranch in Utah?" Within 20 minutes, I got a call from Jack Sarfati. How dare you spread rumors about, and with my name on it? This was not supposed to. Nobody was supposed to know about this, and blah 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 blah. And he was really angry at me, right? Now, I had a brand new computer at this point. I just had it about just a couple 3 months, and right after I talked to Sarfati, my computer went haywire. My CD drawer was opening and closing on its own. There was weird tiling effects that were going. All these windows were opening and closing instantaneously on my computer, and my computer died. And I'm thinking to myself, "What the hell?" So I took it to the computer store, and the guy said, "You've had a catastrophic hard drive failure." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I've never seen this before. Your hard drive physically broke." The arm or something that reads the disk at the hard drive. He said it was a catastrophic physical failure. This these things are supposed to last, 50 to 75, thousand hours. What, you
Yeah.
know, how old is this? It looks brand new. I said, it is brand new. Thank God I backed up my data. I did lose some things,
I bet you
but
did.
I find that the the timing pretty amazing. Thank God I had a laptop. So I spent the next 2 weeks damage control, damage control time. I called every NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Sciences board member, John Schuessler, George Knapp, Valet, Bruce Cornett. I can go down the list of all the people that I called. And it was difficult to get through to some of them, but man, I was
Yeah.
persistent. I said, what is going on here? Will you comment on this off the record or otherwise? And every single one of them said, no, nothing like that's ever happened up here. So over the intervening years, I slowly began to find out that, hey, maybe something did happen up there. I talked to a woman that had been nosing around the ranch. She was the manager of the local Pizza Hut in town there, and actually in Vernal, which is the first big town to the west of Fort Duchesne. And she said that one night she was closing up, and these helicopters flew over, headed west towards the ranch, and a convoy of black SUVs with whip antennas and blacked out windows. Soon after, within a minute or two after, came charging by and headed over. So she grabbed one of the workers, a friend of hers that worked with her, and who she was taking home, and she goes, let's go to the ranch and see what's going on. She immediately knew that they were going to the ranch.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but that was her assumption. So this would have been July 99. And so she hopped in a car, they went over there, and I'm not sure exactly. I think she was right at the entrance to the ranch, sort of parked off the road. It was already dark, and she saw an ambulance come out and a flatbed truck with something huge, a semi truck with a big trailer, and something very large was on the back, but it was covered up with tarps. And so they're sitting there and they're kind of taking notes on what's going on for about an hour or so. And she said that all of a sudden somebody tapped on their window, and it was one of the Fort Duchesne native, I guess Bureau of Indian Affairs cop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the tribal cop. I think it was a tribal cop. The other incident was a BIA guy. But the tribal cop knocked on the window with his flashlight and said, "Can I help you, ladies? What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, we're just kind of just hanging out and talking." He goes, "Well, you go hang out and talk somewhere else," and he chased them away. And she said that this was in July '99. I have another witness who I can't say too much about them because I don't want to get them in trouble, but they were let's put it this way, they were in the health services, and they heard that somebody had died, and then other people had been injured, was the story I got from them. But I said, when was that? She goes, I don't know, mid to late summer '99. So I have two confirmations of the initial story from 2002 that was said by the woman in England. So, draw your own conclusions. I don't know. Do you get the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch TV show over there?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Well, there is some evidence based on the show that physical things can happen to people that are detrimental to their health. I know Thomas Winterton had a hematoma or some sort of weird
It did.
bump on his head, and they'd suffered from radiation burns. why they didn't immediately call the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, Department of Energy, and report, radiation effects. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you would want to report to the proper authorities, right? Well, they didn't
Yeah,
for some reason.
that's true.
So I'm not. It's kind of weird that that didn't go down. But anyway, that's about the extent of my knowledge of. Well, not really. I mean, I know a lot more about the case. I've done quite a bit of research into the spiritual traditions of the Ute. I've become a go-to guy, in terms of white boys talking about skinwalkers. It's the most taboo subject on the Navajo and Apache Indian reservations. You will not find anyone barely. I've barely ever gotten any Navajo or Apache to talk about the subject with me. In fact, I used to do guided trips up to Grand Canyon for a private tour company, and super high-end clients, and we would stop at the Cameron Trading Post on the Navajo Reservation on the way back, which is one of the finest galleries of Native American art in America. And one of the kids that worked there, I noticed pretty early on, so this would have been 2007, 2008. In the gallery, they have quite a number of Kachina dolls that are very, very. These are the real high-end ones that don't have the fluffy stuff for feathers. They have real cottonwood carved feathers. Each feather is carved, incredible detail. And they cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, one day, there were a Hopi ogre Kachina doll and two Skinwalker dolls were on display. Now, knowing quite a bit about Skinwalkers at the time, I was amazed that somebody would have the balls to carve one, number one, and number two, that the gallery would have them on display on the red.
Yeah.
So I walked up to the kid who was one of the workers there, and I said, "Where did you get the carvings of the Nishildolshi?" which is the name of Skinwalkers in Navajo? And his eyes got really big. His mouth dropped open. He turned on his heel, ran out the door, abandoned the shop.
Oh my God.
Nobody was left in the shop. And so the manager, I'm wondering what the hell's going on. And I'm looking around thinking, well, maybe I'll stay, because the manager became a very good friend of mine and was, at this point, he was very friendly with me. And he happened to walk in. He was coming back from lunch. And I said, "What happened to your kid that was working here?" And he goes, "He's not here?" I said, "No, I asked him, and I asked him about the Skinwalker carvings, and I used the Navajo name for the Skinwalker." And his eyes got big. He turned around. He ran out. He literally ran out of the shop. Well, I found out my next trip, a day or two later, that the kid, hearing me say the taboo word,
Right.
he instantly thought that I was a Skinwalker.
Oh.
It turns out he was being trained as a healer in the Navajo healing tradition. And so he knew a lot about the subject. And to have a white boy in a black cowboy hat with a beautiful bolo tie come in and ask him about the Nishildolshis in his language, just freaked him out. And from then on, whenever he saw me, he would instantly turn around and go the other direction, and he wouldn't look at me. He would notice me, and then he would avert his eyes, because you can't lock eyes with a Skinwalker. He can jump inside you and take over your motor functions, make you do things, say things, go places that you have no control over. Is one of the powers that they have, supposedly.
And I know we talked a bit about Grand Canyon, but Stargazer just said, "Has Chris done any investigation into the Grand Canyon area?"
Into the what? The
Grand
canyon?
Canyon area.
Oh, oh yeah, absolutely. I probably know more about it than anybody. David Childers knows a lot. David Hatcher Childers, the guy from Ancient Aliens, my landlord for 10 years. He knows a lot. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a couple of YouTube videos about us looking for the entrance to the underground city that the
That's
Hopi say
right.
is
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
And
and it's not Egyptian; it's the Cam culture that brought you Cambodia and Angkor Wat, and the Cam culture was a seafaring culture, and David Childress is convinced that it's the Cam who came over here and left the seated Buddha and the mummies and whatnot in there, based on his investigations and research. He thinks that that's more likely who actually left artifacts there. We were flying drones and trying to locate the entrance. I've also been in touch with a couple of different teams that have actually climbed down from the rim. Very dangerous to do. A couple of them almost died, and they're looking for the entrance to Kincaid's Cave, as it's known.
has there been problems in the past where somebody's been in one of them caves?
Did what? Say again?
And there being somebody going into one of them caves and seeing aliens?
No, not to my knowledge. According to the Hopi, they say that the underground city is where they go when the earth is going to cleanse itself. And that's where they went at the end of the third world into the beginning of the fourth world, which is the current world that's almost about to end. And that the ant people, which is a kind of an alien, if you think of what an ant person would look like.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of an alien looking form. The ant people live down there, and they take care of the Indians when the earth is cleansing itself. And I've since become friendly with Malava, who is the last holy man of the Snake Clan of the Hopi on First Mesa. There was where he lived for many years, and he lives now down in outside of Phoenix. But the Snake Clan are the individuals on the Hopi res that their one of their primary functions is interfacing with the underground dwellers. One of them being the ant people, another being Bigfoot, who they believe lives underground, and other forms that are guardians of the water. And he's mentioned on a number of occasions. I've talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, the Grand Canyon is the main facility that they go to," but he says they're all over the Southwest. Supposedly, according to the Zuni elder that I knew, Clifford Mahudi, he said there's an underground city in the big caldera that's right to the east of Los Alamos in the National Lab. And that's where the medicine traditions of the Pueblo people, that's where the medicine men go when the earth is going to cleanse itself. They have their own sort of facility. And that's underneath Bandelier National Monument. And the northern Pueblo Indians, the northern Rio Grande Pueblo Indians, up to the Taos Pueblo, they believe that in the San Luis Valley, where I lived in Colorado, right there to the east, or to the west, rather, of the Great Sand Dunes, there's an underground, some sort of underground facility that may extend underneath the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which coincidentally has the largest cavern system in Colorado. That's where the northern Pueblo Indians go when the earth is going to cleanse itself. So, and I talked with a miner who said that he was in the late 50s, he was doing excavation underneath Los Alamos, expanding the lab. Most of the lab is underground, and
Yeah.
There's a huge super volcano. There's a big caldera that the lab sits in, and there's all these lava tubes under there, and so they have used the lava tubes for their facility, and then they've expanded out from there. And he said that he and his crew were excavating, and they broke into an ancient tunnel system.
Oh God.
He said they could tell by the amount of mineralization that it was at least 10, 12,000 years old. Obviously, manufactured. And so they started exploring, and they started these tunnel was headed south towards Albuquerque. And so they started going, and then they came to a Y. One continued straight, and the other was curving off, like going towards the Jimenez Mountains, where there's hot springs and stuff over there, and interesting traditions of underground dwellers. And he said that they calculated that they had to turn back right then to get back in time to punch out for their shift. So they turned around and went all the way back and reported it to their supervisors, and they were immediately they were taken aside. Each one was separately debriefed. It was like they were interrogated, and then they were all put on different teams, so they weren't together anymore. And I said, "Well, what'd you start working on after that?" And he goes, "I was on the team that dug the tunnel up to Dulce."
Yeah.
And this is an old guy that could barely hear. I guess he lost his hearing from blasting underground.
Yeah.
But he had no idea about all the stories about the underground base at Dulce and the aliens and all that. He'd never heard any of that. He was actually the grandfather of my guitar player in one of my bands. And I just happened to, my friend happened to tell me the story that grandpa used to tell them. And then I wrangled it an introduction.
Yeah.
And from what I can gather is the Dulce myth of the underground facility is a cover story because they were taking the discarded nuclear waste from Los Alamos, the lab where they developed the atomic bomb, and they were bringing these drums of highly radioactive material and storing them underground underneath the Dulce Indian, the Hickory Apache Indian Reservation. It was illegal at the time to bury it on government land, so they paid the Indians off to store it on their land. And then they detonated a 47 megaton nuclear device underneath the Dulce Reservation, which irradiated all the groundwater and irradiated the gas that they were trying to free up so that they could. El Paso gas company was trying to free up pockets so that they could go down and tap the gas reserves. Well, they ended up not being able to use any of the gas because it got radioactive. But I think what they had done was they blew that thing up to create heightened levels of radiation in the area to hide the fact that they were storing nuclear waste.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it sounds as though that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. And, the timing is right. He said he was digging that around 58 to 60, and then they exploded the device in 68, I think, or 66. So, yeah, it's interesting when you start digging into some of these stories, some of the things that you find out. Damn, I haven't let you get a word in edgewise here. It's the whole hour's gone by.
The hour's gone by already.
Well, what do you think? What are your folks on online? They're just saying hello to everybody. They're not really asking any questions.
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions on there, but yeah, very interesting subject is Skinwalker Ranch and why they called it that. And
Yeah. Well,
just
I know a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. I produced a associate produced a segment for Jesse Ventura's show. Of course, everybody knows who Jesse Ventura was.
yeah, I
He
do, yeah.
was the independent, one of the few independents that won the governorship of a state in the United States. He was a third-party candidate for the governor of Minnesota, and a famous professional wrestler. And he was in the movie Predator, and has been in a number of movies. But he and his son and the Oliver Stone's son, Sean, had a show on True TV called Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy Theory,
That's right. I remember it.
and it was the most popular show on the cable network, that particular cable channel. And it was the beginning of the second season. They had done two episodes they had aired. They had a full season of 10 shows in the can, ready to be broadcast. The third show of the season was on Skinwalker Ranch. Well, for some reason, it took 8 months to edit. It went through 25 different edits.
Oh God.
And when they broadcast it, they didn't announce the day that it was going to be broadcast on. Everybody tuned in Tuesday night at 8:00, and it wasn't there. It had been moved to Thursday at 10 or something. There were no announcements. The show came on. I was in touch with the head producer of the show, who sounded really nervous to me. And he said, "Chris, I really can't talk about it. I'm at work." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, I won't talk about it on this line." And so back then we still had hard, landlines.
Yeah.
And he was part of a production company in Hollywood called A.O. Smith. And I had flown out there. I had helped them develop the entire show. I was in all the pre-production. I was involved from the very first meeting. I got full producer credit. They interviewed me. I went up to the ranch. They interviewed me. And when the show came out, I almost called my lawyer because they Franken quoted me. I said, "I can't confirm that deaths occurred on the ranch, but I have sources that claim that they did." Well, they took my sentence and had me say that I can confirm that there had been deaths on the ranch.
Oh.
The exact opposite of what I said. I'm very
Yeah.
careful when I talk about certain things.
Yeah, of course you do.
And they Franken quoted me in 3 different places in my interview. And I'll tell you, I got in so much trouble. George Knapp ripped me a new one. Some folks at NIDS, former NIDS people, ripped me a new one. I got nasty emails from CIA operatives, one of which used to run the science and technology desk, or the weird desk. John Alexander, who at this point I hadn't been introduced to and befriended. Now he's a friend of mine, but at the time he's like, "What's this about aliens eating people?" When you start getting mad emails from CIA guys and NSA guys and guys that have worked for DARPA and the DIA and stuff, and they start dogging you, and I'm saying, "I didn't say that. I said the exact opposite." They said, "Well, it's not what's on the segment. That's not what people are watching." And I got so much trouble. I was doing damage control for 2 weeks.
Didn't Jesse have to go into hiding then?
What's he what?
Didn't Jesse have to go into hiding?
Yeah, well, that was the last episode that was aired. The other 6 episodes 7 episodes would never air. They took the show off after that episode. The show was canceled. It was the most popular show, biggest moneymaker on the channel.
Yeah.
And he ended up having to move to, I think, Cabo San Lucas at the tip of the Baja Peninsula out of the country. His excuse was he has so much metal in his body that the TI, he hated going through the Homeland Security checkpoints at the airport. So he doesn't fly anymore. He drives everywhere. And yeah, his show, with no explanation, most popular show on the channel, was canceled after that Skinwalker Ranch episode. And basically, I think Bigelow bought them off. He didn't want anybody to know some of the things that were going on there. And
probably.
And as pushback, because they kept re-editing it to conform to somebody's wishes, and evidently they pushed the envelope too far, and they got canceled. And I'm not going to use his name, but the main producer of the show told me later that I'm not even really supposed to talk about it, but he pretty much confirmed that
being warned off.
Yeah, that the company had been bought off and made an offer they couldn't refuse.
Well, that's fair enough, isn't it? That's fair enough. What more can you say after that then? Yeah, but thank you for coming on the show. Where can people get your books?
Well, everything's slowly going out of print. My if you act fast, you can get Secrets of the Skinwalker, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley, which is the sort of the cream of all my investigation work and stuff about Skinwalker and all that. That's at Amazon. And or you can go to OurStrangePlanet.com. I'm not going to send books to England that cost about $20. If you contact me at TMV Guy, the Mysterious Valley, the initials, the TM Mysterious V Valley, and then Guy, GUI, one word, tmvguy@gmail.com. I'll send you an e-version of my Secrets of the Mysterious Valley book if you'd like. And you can also, I think at Amazon, get my latest book, which is Stalking the Herd, which is the only book that objectively examines the cattle mutilation mystery. And there's quite a bit of information about UK sheep cases around Shrewsbury and Cornwall and in the Welsh countryside, in the Midlands. And then there's an examination of some of the horse slashing cases. It goes back to 1902. And the French, there's stuff about Sweden and France, and
right,
the 50,000 or so dolphins that have washed up with the same mysterious wounds along the coastline of France and Portugal. So there is quite a bit of stuff about Europe in there as well. So
brilliant.
Yeah, tmvguy@gmail.com. I'll go ahead and I'll send you Secrets of the Mysterious Valley free, and I'll charge you for the cattle mutilation book, Stalking the Herd.
Stalking the Herd, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll throw in the other one for free.
Oh, brilliant. I don't know if you know this guy. My guest on Friday is Richard Boylan.
Richard Boylan, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time.
He talks about the Zuni and the Ope.
Well, he should. He back in the 90s, he was one of our chief disinformation agents.
Yeah, Native American Lifetime.
So he's finally confessed and is doing a mea culpa, huh?
Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
he's on this Friday.
Yeah, ask him about why he lost his license to practice medicine.
I
His
like
hot tub.
this October. Oh my God.
I know a lot about old Dickie boy.
I like that.
He's a
Anyway,
great storyteller, let me tell you.
I bet you is. So thank you again for coming on the show. Thank
Yeah.
you to everybody in the chat room. It's always nice to have people in the chat room. Hopefully, I'll see you on the other side.
Yep. And
Bye for now.
anytime. Good luck with the new show.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you very much.